Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's P-EBT webinar, Locating Student Data to Ensure All Eligible Children Receive P-EBT. My name is Kelsey Boone, and I am a Child Nutrition Policy Analyst with FRAC. We know that available student data was a major factor into how states across the country approached P-EBT this past spring and summer. As states look to implement P-EBT 2.0, identifying available data and creating systems to capture missing data can help ensure access. For today's webinar, we have invited our partners from Code for America and UPD Consulting to share strategies they have identified to find the best available data and resources that they have available to states. But first, we want to give a quick update of what was included in the recently passed Consolidated Appropriations Act. P-EBT was created through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act this past spring, and was extended in the fall in the continuing resolution through fiscal year 2021. Just recently, the Consolidated Appropriations Act provided clarity and flexibility surrounding the program. Next slide. Okay. Before I turn it over to our speakers, I want to give a quick update about the P-EBT provisions included in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. The continuing resolution passed earlier this fall extended P-EBT through fiscal year 2021, expanded benefits to young children, allowed states to make simplifying assumptions, and use the best feasibly available data to support providing benefits given the different ways that schools are operating this school year, and provided funding to fully cover states' costs of administering the program. The Act provides additional clarity and flexibilities to make it easier for families to receive and states to distribute P-EBT benefits. This Act allows states to provide P-EBT benefits to all children under the age of 6 whose households participate in SNAP when school or childcare is closed due to COVID-19. The Act also allows states to utilize simplifying assumptions and best feasibly available data to determine a school or childcare facility status as opened, closed, or operating with a reduced number of days or hours, to establish state or regionally based benefits, including using state or local public health ordinances, to identify eligible children, and to determine eligibility periods. These flexibilities can be used to provide benefits to school-age and young children. The Act also allows state agencies, schools, and local units to receive funding to cover their pandemic EBT administrative costs. We're eager to see the guidance from USDA on the new language and look forward to working with everyone on implementation this year. Next slide. So today I'm happy to introduce some speakers. The first is Eleanor Davis, the Senior Program Manager of the Social Safety Net at Code for America, and Eric Valchef, Director of Strategic Partnerships at UPD Consulting. You can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey. Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm the Senior Program Manager working on our Safety Net team at Code for America. And our focus is re-envisioning a human-centered safety net across the country. And we partner with states to improve safety net service delivery and access for all clients. So in the first iteration of P-EBT back in the spring of 2020, we worked with about a dozen states, advising them on the emergency implementation of this brand new program. And in the first iteration of P-EBT, the issue of data, right, where it was housed, how accurate or complete it was, how it could be used, proved to be a big challenge for states implementing this new program. Now, in this extension of P-EBT through the 2020-2021 school year, we can unfortunately assume that many of the data challenges that existed in the first iteration will not magically disappear. But with the experience of the spring implementation under all of our belts, we are hopefully able to approach the issue of using data for P-EBT benefit delivery a little bit more strategically and hopefully effectively. So today I wanted to offer a few high-level thoughts and recommendations on finding the best available data for P-EBT, actually using that data effectively, and finally on filling in some of the data gaps that might arise. So finding the best available data was certainly a challenge in the spring iteration of P-EBT. Most states did not have a centralized repository of all the data they needed for verifying student lists. And or collecting information, and data transferring from school districts to social service agencies was unprecedented in many states. And so this time around, with many state schools still functioning under really stretched capacity, given the continued reliance on virtual instruction in so many places, the question is really going to be on how to collect and gather the data that's needed in the most user-friendly, human-centered way. So it'll be really crucial this time around to work with school districts to build a shared understanding of what data is available, how data can best be collected and organized, and what systems make the most sense to put into place to make the process of collecting and organizing that data really simple and effective. And whatever data collection and organization tool or system is put into place needs to take into account that data sets used to identify P-EBT eligible children are often stored in different systems and in different formats. So even within a single school district, different schools can often collect different types of information from students and can store that data in different file formats, often with different organizational logic. So schools or school districts or whoever is the holder of the data that's needed need really clear instruction on what data is needed, what format that data is needed in, and how to share or upload that data. So creating a really simple, standardized pathway to collect this data from schools and providing really clear instruction on what is needed and how it's needed will be really key here. And any user interface for data collection, if you are building a brand new digital tool to collect this data, or if you're operationalizing an existing system, or even if you're hiring a vendor to collect and organize this data for you, whatever you're using, test it with a few real schools first. Get feedback on how easy it is to use and look at how the data management strategy works before you launch it fully statewide. A little bit of information will help you catch any bugs or iterate on the process to make sure it's effective before you ask all schools to do it. Next slide. Thank you. So once the data is in hand, it will likely still need some manipulation, some work to make it usable. So oftentimes there are duplicate student records, or the information in the data is potentially outdated or incorrect. So cleaning, standardizing, and matching the data if that's necessary is critical to make sure it's actually usable for the distribution of benefits. But it's critical to make sure that these strategies that you use account for common data discrepancies and honest errors that pop up in this data all the time. For example, we've noticed it's really common for school data sets to transpose a kid's last and middle name, for example, or include nicknames versus full names in some places and not others. It's also really critical to note that many data management practices and systems automate bias by excluding or auto-correcting names that have accents, for example, or disallowing dual surnames or hyphenated names, which occur more commonly in non-Anglo cultures and languages. And so these data standardization practices produce errors that disproportionately impact students of color. So we have to intentionally undo the racial and cultural biases that have become baked into our technology systems and data practices. And if matching student records across data sets is necessary for your P-EBT strategy, it's critical to find the right data matching strategy. Unfortunately, in the first iteration of P-EBT, many students did not receive this benefit or were delayed receipt of the benefit simply because a data matching algorithm failed to identify them in a data set. So all data matching strategies are not created equal. It takes a little testing to determine the right strategy that will get you the lowest false positive rate, but that more importantly, won't unnecessarily deny children benefits. So you should be testing out different matching strategies to see which one can get you at the highest match rate. We actually produced a tool that I linked to here at the bottom of this slide on the best practices for matching student data for P-EBT delivery. It's really a sort of a how-to instruction manual on data cleaning, standardizing, deduplifying, and matching student data. And there's a lot more detail on the matching strategies that Code for America used in that tool there. Next slide. So while we, of course, know that direct issuance is the most effective approach to get P-EBT benefits into the hands of families with minimal burden, the intense volatility and instability that many families and schools are currently facing means that there are that many more opportunities for students to be missed in the direct issuance data. So there has to be some sort of alternative data collection pathway. It could be some sort of online form that you produce, but there should be some sort of process by which families who are eligible but who are missed in the direct issuance data can share their data and can receive the benefit. And this should be integrated into the data collection pathway for P-EBT overall. And lastly, digital outreach strategies to reach families are really crucial, whether it's to let families know to expect the benefits, help to demystify the process of benefit delivery for them, or to direct newly eligible families to submit an application for free and reduced price meals in order to get the benefit. Clear and consistent communication is really key. So text messaging is a really helpful tool here. We know that works to reach families. Email is great. Leveraging schools and school districts as trusted messengers is effective. And we've published a few digital outreach resources with recommendations and examples of P-EBT communications in different formats like emails, text messages, robocall scripts, and I've linked one of these tools below in this slide as well. Next slide. So all of the tools that I mentioned here and more are actually available in a brand new P-EBT resource toolkit that Code for America just published. We have there the data management and matching instructional tool that I mentioned before. We have a lot of tools on digital outreach strategies as well as tools on standing at the right level of client support for P-EBT, as well as tools on working with vendors for P-EBT delivery. So all of those tools are there. You can download them for free and would be happy to share that tool out for any folks who are interested. Thank you so much. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Eleanor. Sorry about that. I am Eric Valchef. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at UPD, Urban Policy Development, and now Crocus. We exist really in the use of data to solve complex problems, mostly in the education space. Public education is where we live the most. I wanted to walk you through some things that we feel are important for you to gain context of some of the challenges with the information that you're getting from the student side. UPD, we've worked with 32 states doing Department of Education data systems, big data conversions. We do data standards, EdFi, SEDS, generate all of those sorts of things. The reality is there is a lot of reporting that happens in schools, but the collection that we really need most is not necessarily well aligned to what we need for P-EBT. UPD and now Crocus, we're here to support you. We work basically to create equitable, sustainable, easier to access processes and systems so that you can literally reach 100% or as close to 100% of the students as possible. So this year, with the continuing resolution, there's some real challenges. Not all schools have done their eligibility verification. So to what Eleanor said, we need to make sure that we have plans in place to advocate and emphasize that this stuff is important at the LEA or school district, the schoolhouse level. So there's things that we can do to support you in each of these areas. But probably the most difficult, the highlighted in green that you see, the most difficult thing to really think about is what are we calling an operating status? It's not an element of information that's routinely collected by schools. It's certainly not, because of that, something that's reported up through State's Department of Education. So we're going to talk a little bit about that area. And the third is, this is not something that necessarily has to be processed. We've found a number of states with systems that don't handle new jobs well, if you will. So being able to process this standalone outside of the complex systems that are in place for SNAP, we're able to help you really stand something up and make that a lot easier. So I'm going to have you go to the next slide and take a deeper dive on what direct issuance really means. It's really a four-part act. We need to know who the kiddo is. We need to ensure that they have been marked as eligible. We need to know how to reach them, and we need to know the criteria of the eligibility. That's the learning modality. This is the most significant area, and again, the perfect is often the enemy of the good. And what we want to make sure is, while this may be a goal state and something we can collaborate with you on, it doesn't mean that you can't fulfill to many students and be able to have, because of the flexibility in the extension, we can meet the needs of getting out to the most of the children that are out there and the households that are out there. But the benefits of understanding the operating status, the learning modality, it's important enough just for P-EBT. But as a data collection element, this is something that states are beginning to really think about more. And this might be an area that, because you need it and they see the benefit from the curricular side, the teaching and instruction, professional development, understanding how kids are engaging with their learning, this really adds to the collective benefit, right? So think of this as learning modality as something that we can all work on in terms of a virtuous cycle, right? So that we can all work together to create some new data collection that would really make all of this move very cleanly and very handedly forward. So I'm going to have you go to the next slide. This is Eleanor, you mentioned something, the alternative data collection pathway, and this is something that I think is really critical to think about. So we've kind of mapped out a generic process, if you will, that we can work with any of you as states on. And I want to pause on that to mention that thanks to support of the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Foundation, we're able to do the work under you as pro bono services. So if you have questions, if you're thinking about how to solve these things, we can talk to you, and you don't have to worry about a bill. So let us know how we can help, and we'll look at how we can discover and investigate a process forward. But if you look at direct issuance from a data file, of all the hiccups and all the challenges with it, and Eleanor really did a great job of looking into those things, the addresses and understanding where the kids are and the biases in the data and all of those sorts of things. But the data is there, and it is 2021, and we can get at that information. We can work with you to do it. But having that alternative mechanism out there is important as well. But the concern is, don't set it up to invite problems. Make sure that alternate strategy that is formatted in a way that's beneficial to the process, whether you're using it internally from a help desk, from a call center, for your people to be able to use, whether you're pushing it out externally for people to visit your website. Let's make sure that you're setting yourselves up for success so that it can be the information that may be keyed in is easily verified to the known information from the SEA and the LEA files. So we can talk to you about what those data standards are and what each state's different. Every state is different. You all know that. But the reality of thinking through how that's set up is certainly it's worth the extra step, and it pays big dividends. So once we do that, we have the LEA roster file. We do the verification. We understand who are the eligible students. Another big piece to this that we really advocate for is to make sure we actually, before we send out the cards, before we do the fulfillment, let's verify the addresses, because it's expensive, right? To be able to have a cycle there, and that's that yellow bucket that you see, so that we can return them back through the school loop, if you will, to figure out what might be going on. It's a step worth taking. So once we have that, once we understand, and we can cross-reference that to the SNAP eligibility, bring in the kiddos, the birth to 5 kiddos that are included, fortunately, in this extension, we're able to come up with that master file, format it to your fulfillment house's standards, and be able to have you push it out with minimal effort. So again, it sounds very simple. It's more talking than teching, is what I say oftentimes, because once we get the right people together and we talk about the processes, we talk about the systems, we talk about the availability of information, it's usually a pretty straightforward job to know what the problems are and go about creating strategies to solve them. So with that in mind, I know that that's a lot to take in. If you could go to the next slide. In this, we'll have a link to the direct issuance primer that we put together. Again, please use that. Educate your colleagues. Send it to your counterparts, the SEA. Bring us in for a conversation. Certainly, 30 minutes is not it's time well spent. If nothing else, to have a sounding board for plans that you have in place and what you want to go forward with. So we're here to help. We appreciate your time today. We look forward to a dialogue with you to see where we can help really with such a critical and important need today. So thank you so much. So Kelsey, I think we can turn it back to you if you wanted to maybe open up some questions.
Yeah, first, can you go to the next slide for me, please? I just wanted to share a few resources that FAC has compiled for learning more about P-EBT and for links to the new child nutrition summary of the Omnibus Coronavirus Response Package. So that's where you can find some resources. Next slide. In addition, we've provided links to our upcoming webinars here. Over the next few months, we're going to be doing multiple P-EBT deep dive webinars. So keep checking our website for those registration links. And here are the next few that we have coming up. All right. We have a few minutes left for questions, and if you want to enter them in the Q&A box, I just want to let you know we may not get to every question, but we will follow up afterwards with any questions that we do not get to. So let us start with the first question that I see is, can state administrative funding be used for school districts to pay staff who are responsible for tracking students, or is there going to be any money for them? So in the new guidance, it has been stated that the administrative funding can be passed to local units, which are school districts. So I believe that I'm not 100% sure if that's what is meant by that question, but that is the information that we have right now. Okay, so the next question for our panelists is, for parents who may be concerned about their child's info being shared by a government agency, what protections are there to assure them that the info is secure from hacking, immigration, and other legal concerns, e.g. probation, debts, etc.?
Yeah, I can jump in maybe on a quick answer to this. I think we found in the first iteration of P-EBT working pretty directly with families in a few states that a few things were helpful when it came to mitigating some concerns that folks had about using this benefit were really clear language and who the messenger was. So, you know, we tried to be really upfront and really clear at the front of all the materials that we built for families, that this was not counted towards public charge. We tried to use the phrase school meal replacement benefit very frequently, so trying to be very clear that this was just to replace meals that children were getting at school. And so just trying to be really simple and clear with sort of that framing. I think another thing that we found really useful was to have, again, schools be that messenger. So there are, you know, many families for a lot of really valid reasons perhaps have sort of a different relationship and a different level of trust with the school system, with their school, than they potentially do with the human services agency in their state. They really sort of see the school meal benefit as something independent. They don't necessarily think of it as a federal benefit. They think of it as a localized school benefit. And so when that messaging comes from the school, from that trusted messenger, reinforcing this is just a replacement school benefit, it's just money to replace the meals that your students were already receiving at school when they were getting in-person instruction, we found that was really helpful, and a lot of families helped them understand that this was not sort of public charge, that they were not going to be asked to maybe return the funds if they used them. You know, we definitely heard concerns from states and families who just sort of received a card in the mail and felt a little nervous about using that money. Like, is there going to be punitive fines if I use this? And so I think, again, that clear, consistent messaging, that language of the school meal replacement, really leveraging the schools, those trusted messengers to families to reiterate that messaging is really useful.
You know, that's exactly right. And Eleanor, there's one thing in that question that I think is worth addressing as well, and that's the data sharing among the interagency. The initial, the disaster and the P-EBT, the P-EBT language does allow for intergovernmental sharing amongst the Health and Human Services and the State Department of Education. So it paves the way where there may not be a data sharing agreement in place, which is often very cumbersome and takes time and has a lot of people. The legislation actually streamlines that and makes that far easier from agency to agency.
So we actually have a follow-up to that question. Within the data systems being constructed, what prevents the info from being shared? Are there legal protections in the statute?
Are there legal protections in the statute? Not sure I totally understand it, but what it means is it allows for intergovernmental cooperation between, say, Health and Human Services and the SEA underneath their existing data privacy policies. So, for example, in the school space, we have FERPA that ensures we all work under to make sure that PII, that personally identifiable information, is protected at the student level. So none of that is waived. So it's still, you know, anything that we do is still compliant under FERPA.
Okay. So I think we're getting a lot of state-specific questions, which I think we can follow up with separately. And let's see.
Yeah, Kelsey, maybe I would just add that, you know, I'm noticing a lot of questions in here in the chat that seem really interesting that we'd love to dig into, that seem like they have some pretty state-specific context, and it would be helpful to get a little bit more background. And just to reiterate, both ERIC and UPD, as well as Code for America, are philanthropically funded to be able to provide, you know, consulting, support, advising to states at no cost. And so we are very helpful, very willing to follow up with anyone individually. The slides will be shared out with our contact information. We also have just sort of published resources you can peruse. So for any of these that seem like they might need a little bit more background to dig into, we'd be happy to continue this conversation, both Eric and I together, or separately. We have slightly different but overlapping expertises and love to partner.
And I think with that, we'll just wrap up there, because I think a lot of these questions do require that extra background that you were talking about. So if anyone has any other questions, you can email any of us with those questions. I want to thank you all for being here today, and I want to thank Eric and Eleanor for presenting, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.